Welkom terug. Ons het vroeër vir julle al vertel van Warren Eva wat K2 gaan klim saam met sy vriend John Black. En jy sal dit nie glo nie. Hulle het toe nou die berg geklim, soos ons vir julle gesê het hier op die program, en hier sit Warren by ons in die ateljee. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you, Pierre.
It's great to have a true adventurer with us in studio. Huh?
It's wonderful to be back. I mean, last time we spoke was a few months ago, and to be back successful with having put the flag on the summit. Yeah, there's lots of stories to tell. It's still overwhelming. It's been a humbling experience to come home, but lovely to be here. Thanks for having us.
En Jana, natuurlijk, Jana Niemoller, jou lewensmaat. Jana, is lekker om jou te hê. Jy het 'n kritiese kardinale rol ook gespeel in hierdie hele klimproses. En hoe doen 'n mens dit? Hoe raak jy verlief op so ou en dan trek jy jou met die besigheid in? Sukkel jy nie?
Ek is baie moeg. Ek slaap gereeld. Hy's 'n besige ou. Ek spot altyd en sê aan die einde van die maand moet hy net vir 'n dag iewers iets gaan doen dat ek kan rus en net niks doen nie. Dit is altyd aan die gang. Ons het op die ekspedisie nogal gegrap want iemand het my gevra hoe het hulle my gekry om dit te doen saam met hom. Sê ek het nie regtig 'n vraag gehad nie.
Ja, jou keuse was nie joune nie.
Nee, daar was net ons gaan. Ons gaan vir 'n hike en dis geboek en by the way ek gaan K2 klim. So toe gaan ons maar.
Sure.
Gaan ons maar saam.
Warren, what kind of training do you do before you decide, okay, I'm going to do something like this?
Sure, Jennifer. It's a hangover process, but probably if it's just talking about physical training, which is probably 20% physical and 80% mental, is 6 months of really focused, just running, cycling, swimming. We do quite a lot of rock climbing as well. Our country is just born for the outdoor, or just made for the outdoors. You know, we're born in the right place for it, so it's nice and easy to train. But we've got good weather. But that's it. Running, cycling, just general fitness. We don't have snow-capped mountains, so we don't get to train in the snow and ice. That's a bit of a downside, but we do our best. And this has been a 20-year process. You know, so the training actually started in 2000. John and a few other friends, we went on our first ever expedition. In fact, I bunked school for 2 weeks, and when we went and we climbed Kilimanjaro, we were still teenagers, and we from then until now have probably done about 30 expeditions to different countries around the world. We've climbed on all the different continents. But been very privileged to do what we've done. But that's really been the training. 20 years of experience in the mountains, and it's brought us to a point where we felt we were ready for K2.
Just like you say, it's 80% in your head. It's that period of adjusting your mind and the way you see things for the specific task eventually, for the outcome that you had. I mean, you were the first 2 South Africans to reach the peak of K2.
Yeah, that was it. And it's in mountaineering terms, K2 is the prize mountain. It's certainly considered the hardest but statistically speaking, the most dangerous. When we left to go on the trip, it was a 1 in 4 chance of dying.
Wow.
That was the statistic. There were 370 people who had summited, and 91 people died trying. So the stats have been improved slightly this year, having had a safer year, although there were some tragedies. But we're glad to be down safely, and yes, we got to put the first South African flag on the summit of K2, and that was a real honour. It wasn't our reason for climbing it. It was, like I say, 20 years ago we said we want to climb K2, and it eventually came together now. But to have been the first was a real prize, and it's not through lack of trying. There've been a few South African attempts by exceptional adventurers and mountaineers, guys who have climbed many other 8,000ers. Louis Carsten's one of them, Mike Horn another. Mike Horn, I think, attempted 3 times, and he's a world-class adventurer. He's a guy I really admire. So it just explains how difficult the mountain is. So everything worked in our favor. It's not just about being physically fit. There's the weather, there's the snow conditions, there's all number of things that have to come right on the day to be able to put a summit rotation together and get there safely.
Wow. I do want to know, I want you to take us through the journey a little bit. And before we even get to the summiting, just from when you leave here until you get to base camp, how long does that journey in itself take?
It depends who you ask. It's a 100-kilometer walk But you know, we fly out of Joburg with everything that we have for the next 2 months in 2 duffel bags.
Wow.
Ja.
That you have to live out of. So you hope you packed enough undies and enough snacks. We took biltong and drivos, probably 50% clothes and gear and 50% biltong and
My
drivos.
second bag was a snack bag. So
Yeah.
I was allowed 1 bag of clothing and the rest had to go to food.
Unfair. She was there as well.
True.
Min klere, sis. But it's a long trek. I mean,
Yes.
then getting to Pakistan and then hiking 100 k's just to get to base camp.
So we flew to Islamabad and then into another town, small town called Skardu, and from Skardu we get in jeeps. These fascinating old Toyotas from they're 50-year-old Toyotas that these guys have chromed up and blinged, and it's
We were in a hot pink
actually
one.
love them. Our vehicle was pink, but let me tell you,
Pink.
they were some of the most impressive 4x4ing I've ever experienced. And I mean, we've got a culture of outdoor 4x4ing and overlanding in South Africa, but it was very impressive. And there's just these sheer drops of like next to you, you know, almost if you look out the window, the wheels almost pushing the rock or you know the stone
yeah.
off the edge into the raging torrent below. And it was a good 8 hours of jeep drive to the roadhead, and they literally threw us and a goat out of the back of this vehicle with our bags, and that was it. The jeep disappears, and you start walking from there. And from there is about 100 kilometers. Took us 5 days, and it's not 100 kilometers of path. We're walking on a glacier, because the Karakoram mountains are just so steep and rugged that there's rockfall and avalanche for coming off the mountains. So you're walking in the valley between the mountains, but on the glacier itself. And the glacier is a moving river of rock and ice. So there's never a path. You just have to make your way up this moraine and up the ice all the way to base camp. So, but it sounds grueling. Yes, it's physically pretty tough and long days, 8-10 hours of trekking every day, but unbelievably beautiful. And every corner you turn, there's a new glacier, a new valley, a new peak. Comes out of comes around the corner with a snow cap, and it was just, it's hard to be tired. It
Jana,
really is stunning.
Jy het saamgestap tot by die basecamp, né?
Dis reg, ja.
Vertel ons 'n bietjie wat het toe nou gebeur by basecamp.
Daar kan nie veel gebeur nie want daar's nie baie om te doen nie. So ons het gaan ice climbing doen eendag. Ons het 'n bietjie gaan training kry en die Sherpas het ons by een van die ice peaks opgevat. En ja, hulle het vir my ice access en crampons gegee. Baie mense sal wonder hoekom hulle dit gedoen het, maar ek is daar op en ons het 'n bietjie gaan ice climbing doen. Son het so 4:00 in die oggend opgekom, word wakker, gaan drink koffie in die mestent, gesels. Ja, dat
It's
was
amazing
nie
how much
rarig.
rubbish you can talk
Ja.
for so long.
Ons was
Still find something else to say.
op dag 2 was ons na die memorial site toe, die Art Gilkey Memorial site toe. So jy kry maar goedjies om te doen. Gaan vir 'n stap deur basecamp, ontmoet ander mense, ons gaan doen 'n bietjie ice climbing. Ek was gelukkig terug op pad uit voor hulle slegte weer gekry het. So toe moes hulle was maar redelik tent bound.
Is dit?
Kon nie regtig veel doen nie, maar terwyl ek daar was, het die son geskyn en ons kan buite wees en goed doen en sit en gesels buite en ons het 'n baie nice was vir almal vir ons was een van die klimmers wat saam met hom opgegaan het was sy naam is Pei. Hy's 'n Japaneese klimmer en hy het vir ons 'n tradisionele teepartytjie gehou. En hy het 'n mooi kraaghemp gaan aantrek en sy mooiste moois gaan aantrek en hy het vir ons 'n tradisionele Japaneese tee-seremonie gehou. Dit was baie spesiaal. Dit was
Wow.
ja, ons het goedjies gekry om te doen.
We've got less than a minute. Just tell us, is there like a schedule to climb the mountain? Are there people waiting in queues? Is it organized? Are you waiting for a window to open in the weather? Why were you spending time on base camp?
So base camp is at 5,000 meters, about 20,000 feet. And so we need to give our bodies time to adapt, even just to base camp,
Oh.
to that altitude. I mean, it's higher than Mont Blanc in Europe. So we were living at that altitude and needed to give our bodies time to adapt before we can then go higher. We then go higher, come back, recover, go higher again, So it's a whole process of rotating up and down the mountain to adapt to the altitude.
Ja, Warren, Jana, ons gaan nou net verder met julle gesels. Thank you very much. Welkom terug, want Warren Eva en Jana Niemoller is hier en hulle gesels spesifiek oor Warren Eva se, ek wil nou sê, nie poging om K2 te klim nie. Hy het hom geklim. So suksesvolle klim van K2 is nogal iets vir die boeke. Warren, when we left off the conversation, we were talking about logistics. We were talking about getting onto the mountain, adjusting to the altitude, which is the base camp higher than Mont Blanc still freaks me out. Altitude sickness, for instance. Was the team affected by altitude sickness?
We were actually. So we started out with 4 climbers. There were four of us South Africans that we've climbed together as a team or as a group of friends for many years. Sadly, one of our climbers was airlifted out of base camp shortly after a rotation up to just slightly higher on the mountain, been sick. And then Alan, who then came with us all the way up to Camp 1, which is an achievement in itself, he decided at that point he's going to take on a supporting role. And all credit to him, and he did so much for us from base camp, turned his climb into a supporting role and sat in base camp and looked after us from there. Did what he could to support us both emotionally as well as technically from lower down. So it was left to John and I, and in terms of climbing from there, we just take the weather gaps that we can get. K2 is known for its very fickle weather, and we get a lot of weather reports in. We still, even with all the weather reports coming from all over the world, still got hit with weather that was unpredicted. Sitting in our tent at night and getting hit by gale force winds and freezing temperatures. And in fact, one night there was a tragedy. Someone got caught out in one of those winds, and we found him the next day. But it's not a mountain to be taken lightly in terms of weather. So the weather windows that we get, we call them windows. We would have to then allow ourselves time to adjust, which means climbing higher, letting your body produce red blood cells, which is really what it's doing to adjust to the altitude. And then we'll come back to base camp for a few days to recover from that effort and then go back up. So we did 2 rotations.
It's not just a single attempt. You have to rotate up the mountain.
Yeah, so, and with that you're exposing yourself to the rock falls, the avalanches, the general dangers of climbing K2.
It's spine-chilling. I mean, were there times that you were climbing and you thought, this is it?
We had 1 or 2 moments. John turns out to be a bit of a magnet for rock falls.
My goodness.
But fortunately none hit him, but we came very close once or twice. We also had a number of avalanches very close to us. At one point I was climbing ahead of John, and an avalanche broke off next to me and went past John below me missed him by about 5 meters, which could have ended very differently. But and then on summit day we had probably our closest call with very near to the summit, probably 200 meters from the summit. 300 meters from the summit, we had a bit of a close call with an anchor popping. But I think we're quite proud of the way we dealt with it. We were strong enough, we were experienced enough, and we managed to get ourselves through those situations. But it makes the summit only halfway. And you still got to come back down through all of those dangers.
That's incredible. That moment when you reach the summit, what goes through your mind?
It's it's an emotional roller coaster. For one, it's probably largely relief, and that's how John was describing it yesterday. It's probably more relief than anything. You just eventually run out of uphill, which is quite nice, but. It's the goal. It's something that we've been working towards, if not for months, for years, and it seems to all happen too fast. I think we probably only spent 20 minutes on the summit, 20 glorious minutes. It's very hard to describe the view from the highest point. We actually walked onto the summit pretty much next to each other. We walked on together with the sun rising behind us. We had this perfect sunset. Sunrise. And as the sun was rising, K2 produced a shadow that must have been 100 kilometers stretched out in front of us across the Karakoram. And we could see into India, and you could see into China, you can see into Pakistan. As far as you can see, there's nothing higher than you. It's a very surreal experience, but the tension never leaves because we still had to go back through 3 kilometers of danger, essentially. Rockfall, avalanche, all of the challenges of descending, and 80%, I think the stats are about 80% of the accidents happen on the descent.
Wow.
Yeah,
So
Warren.
it is the dangerous time.
We don't have enough time to keep chatting to you about this. That is depressing. Jana, ek wil op jou gesels het oor dit by die huis kom en weer normale lewe probeer aanvat. Die skok daarvan. Daar's soveel waar ons op gesels. I'm so sorry that time run out. You're going to have to come and visit us again.
Please, would love to. It's a wonderful story, and I mean, we're proud to be South Africans. We're proud to have taken the flag up, and humbled by all the support that everyone's given us. It's been such a wonderful homecoming. Yeah.
Nou ja, kyk net nou. Trots Suid-Afrikaans bo op K2. Mens, my sê nie, wees sal dit nie hou nie.